Hey, so this is just a little video I wanted to quickly throw together for my subscribers, just to maybe sate your appetite a little bit until my next analytical video comes out. It's not scripted, I'm just talking off the cuff. So I'm just going to rank the Souls games, and I'll give a little short analysis on each one as I do it, the kind that you are probably used to from me. And yeah, anyway, so I've omitted a D or an F tier because I wanted to really drive home the fact that none of these games are bad. I think they're all really good. So there's no D tier, there's no F tier. And the second thing is that there's no Demon Souls because I have not finished Demon Souls. I'm ashamed to say, I know. You could accuse me of being a fake fan, I suppose. But anyway, I'm not going to rank it because I have not finished it. Alright, so let's just get right into it. Okay, so we'll start with Nightreign because it's the most recent. I really like Nightreign, and it really exceeded my expectations. I was expecting it to be a lazy cash grab, but it really surprised me. The story, I think, was the most surprising part of this game. The characters were really well written and fleshed out, and just their interactions and the remembrances are really interesting, and I love the writing in this game a lot. I think the writing is incredible. That is the way it surprised me the most. The gameplay is really fun, too. Because of the Souls games really encourage a bit of a passive playstyle where you sort of have to wait your turn to attack the bosses. And you would think that that would clash with there being a timer, but it works surprisingly well. And the Night Lord bosses are all really good. They're all really well made. And it's just good. It's really good, and it exceeded my expectations. It's a lot of fun, but I really can't justify putting it any higher than B just because it doesn't stand on its own as much because it's very derivative of Elden Ring. It reuses many of the assets, and it's not as fully featured as these games. And the $40 price tag, I think, is reasonable. I don't think this is a bad deal, and I think it's a great game, and you should play it. But I'm not going to put it higher than B tier just because I would feel uncomfortable ranking it above these more fleshed out, fully featured games. But it's still really good, and I'd still highly recommend it, and it really exceeded my expectations. Okay, so Elden Ring. In many ways, Elden Ring is definitely From Software's best work. The combat is the best it's ever been. The Ashes of War system and the stance breaking system encourage you to really get the most out of your weapon and use the whole moveset. Like, there's an actual reason to use charged R2s now, unlike Dark Souls 3 where there wasn't at all. And the combat feels much more deep and dynamic, and you're really it feels more like an action game, and there's more ways to avoid damage with jumping and all of that, and I think the combat's good. Combat's very good. The legacy dungeons are all incredible. The level design in them is impeccable. They're amazing. They're really fun and rewarding and satisfying to explore. Great level design, lots of shortcuts. They're very complex and interwoven. They're great. No complaints there. There are two things that because I would normally want to put it in one of these tiers based on that alone, because the moment-to-moment gameplay is really incredible in Elden Ring most of the time. But I'm putting it in A tier because there's a very big stain on this game, and that is the open world. And let me try to explain why I dislike the open world so much. I think on a first playthrough, your experience is different, but on subsequent playthroughs, which for me at this point is the majority of my time with Elden Ring, because my first playthrough was a long time ago, the open world, the only purpose it serves is to be a place where items exist, that you can ride past the enemies and pick up those items. And there's not really any reason to engage with those enemies most of the time. So you ride past them, and they cannot catch up to you, they can't really hurt you when you're on torrent, so there's not really any risk or tension. And you ride past them, you go and you collect all the golden seeds and the sacred tears and, whatever other items that are essential. And it really just serves to space out the legacy dungeons. There's nothing interesting in the open world itself. And there's a lot of the copy-pasted content. I'm not even gonna get into that, but that's a huge problem. And I think that if you've replayed Elden Ring enough, you'll know what I'm talking about. Like, when you start a playthrough, you jump on torrent. Well, when you get torrent, you jump on torrent and you ride past everything and you pick up all the items until you get at a legacy dungeon, and then you actually play the game. And I don't know what purpose the open world serves. And the other thing, they had an opportunity to make exploring the open world more rewarding, but they passed up on it. There's so many weapons and armor sets in this game that you need to grind enemies for, and I don't know why. They could have put them somewhere in the open world for you to find, but they instead make you grind basic enemies for hours, and it's baffling. I don't know why they did that. They could have put those in a cave or a catacombs and make it actually worthwhile, but instead, for doing a catacomb, you get some useless spirit ash that you're not even going to use. And it's a shame. It's a shame, but the open world in this game is bad, and it pads out the game unnecessarily without really adding a whole lot of interesting content. It looks really pretty, but that's it. The other thing I don't like about Elden Ring is the story. I think that it's nonsense. I think it's very poorly told. What is the Grace of Gold, first of all? Unless I missed something, there isn't anyone who really explains what that is or what purpose it serves. And I think that it's a major plot point that they shouldn't have left so ambiguous. And the Shattering, why did the Shattering happen? I assumed it was because Marika was really upset about Godwin being assassinated, but as of the DLC, it seems to be that it's implied that Marika was responsible for that because of her association with the Black Knife Assassins, and none of it makes sense. Why do I want to become the Elden Lord? What does that do? What purpose does that serve? And there's no clear motive for your character in this game, and I think that that's disappointing. When this game is firing on all cylinders, it's the best. It is probably the best in the series, but I'm personally going to put it in A tier just because the story and the open world were two huge disappointments. One more thing I want to talk about the open world. The transporter traps. That's such an incredible idea. And I really, really like that idea. Dark Souls 1 has, when you enter the painting in Dark Souls 1, it actually prevents you from warping out and it forces you to escape by yourself, and I think that that's awesome. They had the opportunity to do that in this, but they didn't. You can, as soon as you walk out of the cave from the transporter trap to Caelid, you can just warp out of it. And there's no tension or risk or anything like that, and I think that's really lame. So yeah, anyway, Elden Ring, at its best, it's really, really something. It's really incredible, but to me, those two things, the story and the open world, were so disappointing that I think I'm going to put it in A tier, even though there is definitely an argument to be made that it belongs in the top tier. And Shadow of the Erdtree, I completely forgot to mention, incredible DLC. I like it more than the base game. Shadow of the Erdtree, honestly, alone makes me want to put it in S tier. I don't know. I might revise it at the end, but for now, I'm going to put it in A tier. Okay, anyway, so that's enough of that. Dark Souls 3. No, Sekiro. So Sekiro is not really a Souls game, but I'm gonna put it here anyway just because I have some things to say about it. It's more akin to Devil May Cry or Metal Gear Rising. It's one of those games more than it is a Souls game, and it's pretty good at that overall. The bosses are really good. It's fair. It is challenging but fair. It really embodies that mantra. It's very good at doing that. The rhythm flow that you get into when you play this is very satisfying. But the biggest issue, and this is really all I have to say about Sekiro, and I guess why I'm going to put it in A tier, I don't like spirit emblems at all. I think that spirit emblems punish experimentation when they have no reason to. So you have all these shinobi tools and weapon arts or whatever they're called in Sekiro, and when you use them, you run out of spirit emblems and you have to go grind them because it's a consumable resource. If I'm remembering correctly, it's been a while. And I think that that's a missed opportunity because it really makes you not want to use those things because you'll just run out. And I think it should have probably been more like a devil trigger meter, like in Devil May Cry, where it comes back when you attack enemies. So I'm going to put it in A tier for that, although I do think it's really good. I don't have a whole lot of complaints. I just don't like spirit emblems. Anyway, Dark Souls 3. So Dark Souls 3 doesn't excel at anything now that Elden Ring is out. This game used to have the most polished combat, but now Elden Ring blows it out of the water. The The level design in Dark Souls 3, I think, is really overrated. I think people really harp on Cathedral of the Deep and Grand Archives a lot, and they don't really talk about the more disappointing ones like the Profane Capital and the Road of Sacrifices, and a lot of the other ones that are just kind of lackluster. Like, I think Lothric Castle is a bit lackluster too. People use that to justify why they did away with the interconnectivity, and I don't think it was a worthwhile trade-off. And I think the Legacy dungeons in Elden Ring completely blow the level design in Dark Souls 3 out of the water. So Dark Souls 3 doesn't really stand out. There's nothing really it excels at anymore. And I kind of want to put it in C tier, but I'm going to put it in B just because I don't think there's not a whole, in a vacuum, there's not really a whole lot to complain about. It's very good, it's very polished, and it is easier to replay than Elden Ring because you don't have to ride a horse through an empty open world for 10 hours picking up items. You can just progress as you go through the quote-unquote legacy dungeons, which are always the most interesting content. But I don't think I'm going to be returning to this game as much just because compared to all these other games, there's just nothing about it that really stands out. It feels phoned in to an extent. So I'm gonna put it in. I have a whole video about that, by the way, if you want to learn more, so I'll put that up on the screen. But yeah, anyway, that's basically how I feel about that, so I'm gonna put it in B tier. Bloodborne. I really like Bloodborne. I think that the atmosphere and the world, like the world itself of Yharnam, top-notch stuff, incredible. It's very inspired. I really like the bosses, like the beast bosses are really good. They're very well designed, and I love the weak points that you can hit, and it encourages different positioning strategies and all of that. I think that those are really good. I think the hunter bosses kind of suck because you can kind of just parry spam them to death with really no incentive to do a whole lot else, and they're not as dynamic as the beast battles, but the presentation's top-notch on those, like Gehrman. The story is really good in that moment. I mean, the story in general in Bloodborne, it suffers from a similar issue to Elden Ring, where it's nonsensical and there isn't really a plot. You kind of just stumble across all of the relevant story beats. Like, you stumble across Bergenworth with no context, you just kind of do, and then you stumble across, you jump into a lake for some reason, and then you kill Rom for some reason, and that changes the moon for some reason, and there's just not really any obvious context for any of it. It just kind of happens, so that kind of sucks. And I think I'm going to put it in S, though, just because it is just... I suppose this is... It's hard to articulate why I think this deserves to be an S tier, because I don't think the combat's not as good as it is in Elden Ring, and the individual level design isn't necessarily as good either, but it feels... This is the most different feeling game than compared to these other ones. The setting is totally different, and I think that sets it apart, and the atmosphere is just impeccable. The art direction, incredible again, and I love what they do with the NPC quests in this game too, like with the chapel. I think that was really cool. So it does have good writing at times, but I just don't think the main plot is very well written. The dreams, how it evokes dreams, that's also incredible, very artistically inspired. I love that about this game. So I'm gonna put it in S tier for that. Dark Souls 2. So I've grown more attached to this game over time. I hated it for a long time, and now I like it more. But I still think it's the worst Souls game for a few reasons. But before I get into why, I want to say that I can see myself returning to 2 more than 3 from now on, because I think 2 it's more different than these other games. It has a few mechanics like bonfire aesthetics that aren't in any of these other games, and it makes character building a lot more interesting, and I like that. And the game feel, if that makes sense, is different because I think it's in a different engine. So I can see myself returning to this more than Dark Souls 3 in the future, but there's a few issues I have with it that make me put it in C tier, and this game is jank. It's real jank, and we all already know that. I don't need to lecture you about hitboxes because you've already heard it, but they're a huge problem. And there's another issue that I don't hear people talk about that's sort of related to hitboxes, where an enemy will start doing an attack, and you'll interrupt it by hitting them out of it, or you'll even kill them, and then the animation stops, but the attack goes through anyway, and it can kill you, and it's really frustrating. And when you combine that with the fact that you're constantly fighting massive crowds of enemies, it leads to some truly frustrating gameplay. The world design in this game also really disappointing. People will make excuses for it about how, oh, it's about forgetting, or it's supposed to be the time convoluted world's falling apart, but I don't buy that. I think that it's just nonsense, and I don't believe that putting Iron Keep above Earthen Peak was an intentional piece of design. I think that that was an oversight, or maybe it was a result of just not having enough time to put it together the way they wanted to. The level design's really lackluster in this game. A lot of the times there's not really any shortcuts to use, and they don't loop back around on themselves very much compared to these other games, and I think that that's really disappointing. But I definitely would rather play Dark Souls 2 than 3 right now. If I was given a choice, I would pick 2, just because there's more to it. The DLCs are there's a lot of content in this game. There's a lot of optional content, which I think really there's way more optional content in 2 than in 3, and I think that makes replaying it more interesting. So I kind of want to put it above 3, sort of, but I can't in good conscience, because it's not a better game, even if I enjoy playing it more. To be honest, one thing I actually neglected to mention is that Dark Souls 2 is better at rewarding exploration than a lot of the other games in the series, just because there's so many useful items. And the item placement in general is really good, which is one reason why I kind of regret putting it in C tier, but oh well, too late. Anyway, okay, so lastly, we have Dark Souls 1. Dark Souls, I think this has probably become the most controversial game in the series lately, mostly because of the quote-unquote second half, which, by the way, that's nonsense. When people talk about the quote-unquote second half, so they're talking about the Duke's Archives, Lost Izalith, and the Tomb of the Giants. Am I wrong in thinking that is not even close to being a half of the entire game? That's only 3 levels. And the other thing, so I don't think the whole second half designation is even accurate, but the other thing is that I don't think those levels are that bad. I think that they're pretty good. I think the only one that you can really irrefutably say is bad is Lost Izalith. I think that Tomb of the Giants and Duke's Archives are great. Tomb of the Giants the darkness it's punishing, it's very difficult, and I understand people getting frustrated with it, but I don't see how it's bad. I think it's a unique challenge. I think that there's a lot of ways to overcome it, and it encourages you to tread carefully and go slowly and analyze your surroundings, and that's rare in these games, and I think that that's something that Dark Souls 1 really excels at in general. And the other thing is the challenge. I think another reason why it's controversial is the challenge in Dark Souls 1 is different than it is in these games. So in these games, most of the challenge is coming from fighting bosses. Like, compare this to Elden Ring. Traversal is not challenging in Elden Ring, because 90% of the time you can hop on torrent and nothing can touch you. But in Dark Souls, you have stories of people complaining about how, oh, they wandered into the catacombs and now they're stuck there and they can't get out because it's too hard. And that doesn't happen in these games. You never get stuck in an area. And so I think traversal in Dark Souls 1 is by far the most challenging and interesting than it is compared to any of these other games. And obviously the interconnectivity is incredible. I don't need to talk about that because you already know. And yeah, just doing that, having the interconnected world and the lack of fast travel really it makes this game special. And it's the most unique. I think you can draw a lot more parallels between, even Dark Souls 2, every game beneath it, there's a lot more parallels between all of them, but I feel like Dark Souls 1 is the most weird and different and experimental, arguably. Yeah, so I think that this game's incredible and it's my favorite game of all time. I don't know if that was obvious. I will defend this game to the death. I love everything about it. And I admit there are a few things about it that didn't age very well, like the 4-way rolling. I'm not a fan of that. And I just think that people don't give it enough credit. I think that the whole second half bad meme is really ill-informed. because it's not one half. And did they include New Londo in that? Because New Londo's great. Like, the level design's really good, the environmental storytelling is on point, and the story in Dark Souls 1 also just incredible. It has the best writing out of all these games by far, bar none. It's the only game here, well, okay, Dark Souls 3 has the plot. It has a plot, it's mostly coherent with the Lords of Cinder and Sekiro and Nightreign. But yeah, I just think that Dark Souls 1 has the best plot with the Chosen Undead thing. It's very clearly communicated to the player through Frampt and Oscar. And I think it has the best execution. And yeah, I don't see why people have suddenly turned on this game. I think that it's still incredible. I think it's still a masterpiece. And yeah, it's my favorite game. And, you know, I could go on all day about how it changed my life, it changed me as a person, but I'll save that for a video someday, maybe. But yeah, anyway, top tier, best game of all time. Alright, well, anyway, so yeah, that's basically my tier list of these games. This is not going to get in the way of my long-form stuff. Those are still coming. I still have some analysis videos. The Artorias and the Abyss analysis is still coming. And, yeah. This is pretty much it. So, yeah, I hope you enjoyed, or if you disagree with me, go ahead and, you know, tell me about it in the comments. I'd love to discuss that with you. All right. Thank you, and see you later.